All right, I am so honored and so excited to be joined by Celeste Edmunds, who is an author and the executive director of the Christmas Box International. Celeste, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. What a pleasure.
We are so excited to have you here. You truly are extraordinary, and we are going to talk about your new book, Garbage Bag Girl. Introduce yourself a little bit and talk to us about what inspired you to write this book.
Oh, gosh. So my name is Celeste, and when Richard Evans, who is my co-author and also the founder of our organization, the Christmas Box International.
He's been on the show many times.
I'm sure he has. I started as his personal assistant almost 30 years ago when he wrote the little green book, The Christmas Box, which is how we got our charity name. And he was kind of getting tidbits about my life. But then when I moved over 2.5 years in to work in the charity side, he brought up me writing my story. And at the time I was 20, gosh, this dates me, but I was 24 and I just had my second child. And I was like, gosh, it just feels, I'm okay talking about it here and there, but it feels like a lot. And I have little kids and it just felt like a lot.
Yeah.
And so we kind of tabled it. And about 19 years ago, he wrote a fictional version called Finding Noel about my life. And so I kind of got to put like my toes in the water. And then when I became executive director 4 years ago, we brought it up again. And I was like, I'm a little closer. My kids are now almost all out of high school. I'm feeling like I have more bandwidth to take on these bigger projects. And he let a whole year go by. And then he says, you work better on deadlines. I mean, don't we all? And he said, so how's the spring? I would like a draft. I was like this coming spring?
This is happening.
Yeah. So I had about 6 months to kind of write and get my head around it. And I naively thought, how bad could it be? How hard could it be? It's my story. Like nobody's going to know it better than me. But as I started to write it, and my superpower is to surround myself with people who are smarter than me. And so one of the things I did was get a trauma therapist. Highly recommend on speed dial if you're going to write a book about yourself. So I would kind of go through this process of I'd sequester and write for a week, and then I would call it recovery, and I would talk to her, and I would do some other things that I learned to do to kind of help with my mental health stuff. And when I was talking to her, she taught me something really important, which is that when anyone's going through trauma, and we all have our thing, whatever it is at any time in our life, we're working so hard typically to move past it as fast as we can because we just want to get over it or through it, and that we don't manage the process that it takes to actually manage it.
Interesting.
And she said, so what's happening is, because I was like, why is it harder to write it than it was to live it? Like, that makes no sense to me. And she said, because you're actually living it now. You're not just pushing through it. And I was like, it was an interesting lesson, but it was also kind of a hard point and a reality check that I needed to go through it. And what happens is, especially with children, is they move really quickly. They tend to have some strong resiliency skills.
Yes, they
that
do.
Just start pushing them through because they're not aware that that's necessary yet. So I experienced things I'd never felt. I was very hurt and crushed by things that had happened to me. I was sad and I mourned for the first time. I was angry and lashed out at people that had hurt me. And so I just had all these emotions that I just didn't have as a kid because I was raising my siblings and I was just doing the best I could at the time. And I just never really felt like at the time things were happening, they were hard. It was almost a normal for me, which, the book doesn't cover a lot. That'll be book 2. That on the mental health side and part of the reason it's called Garbage Bag Girl is because we start to develop these mindsets about ourselves that are so deeply embedded, we don't even know it anymore. We don't even know that's how we think about ourselves. All of a sudden, we might catch ourselves doing a behavior or saying something, and you have to be pretty self-aware and start really working through the trauma process to catch yourself and say, oh, I'm doing that thing. And I'm making that decision because I'm thinking this way. And it's all about the garbage we collect in our brains.
And I mean, if I can get personal with you for
Please.
a second, I have been seeing a therapist for years. I'm very, very honest with our viewers, with our listeners. I've had an anxiety disorder since I came out of the womb. And I remember one of the times I was seeing my therapist, she told me that these negative thoughts I have about myself through different things I've been through created these deep, deep neural pathways in my mind.
That's right.
And I have to literally, when I start thinking, because that's how my brain is, they're so easy to get there. I have to literally picture a stop sign and reroute those thoughts, because that's where we get into with our minds. And it's so much easier to think those, and it's so much harder to not, because that's what we're used to.
That's right. My trauma therapist said, you choose, because even after the book, there's another like 25 years of Celeste mayhem going on in her life. And she said, you have historically chosen chaos because you actually know how to manage chaos. You do that really well. You don't manage calm and what other people might find as normal in any way that they do. You manage chaos. You're quite good at it, but it still isn't healthy. And probably like you, people will comment, well, you're so successful. Look at you, and you got so much going for you. And that's awesome, because you do. But and I always make the joke, yeah, but you don't live with me. Because there's a lot of realism to that. I mean, we all want you to see the best version of ourselves everywhere we go, for the most part.
Yeah.
And so the stuff that is always going on inside, and the behaviors that we choose, and even down to our parenting skills and the way we are with partners, and all the things, those are what you're speaking to there. Those little tidbits that have become so normal in our brain that we don't catch them until it's time to start managing them. And I never use the words work through them or get past them. I always say manage, because I think it's a lifelong journey with mental health. I think we're always managing our life. We don't just get there like it's some destination. We're like, oh, yay, we're there.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I have people say to me, because, what I do with having an anxiety disorder, I have a lot of people that are like, how do you get on camera? How do you do that? How did you overcome your anxiety? And I always go, whoa. I didn't overcome anything. It's just something that A, I have figured out how to make it a superpower of mine. And B, I have learned how to deal with it every day and not let it hinder me.
That's right. And sometimes when we're in these businesses of being public facing and talking to people, those are easy spaces for me. It's the when I get alone, you know what I mean? And I'm getting ready and I'm doing things in the morning, and I'll catch myself just saying crazy things that I would look at someone and say, I would never talk to you that way.
Yep.
I would never say to you the words I say to myself. I would never be that unkind to you.
You wouldn't
ever.
Yeah. I would never be friends with someone who said the things to me that I say to myself.
That's right. And I say that to my girls all the time. You would never talk to each other that way.
Yeah.
Stop talking to yourself that way.
Yeah. I think
But it's practice. You have to practice it.
Oh yeah. It's not just going to happen overnight.
That's right. That's why I say manage it. You're always managing it. And then when I think you've figured out one aspect, something else maybe hits. And so that's why you really are always managing your growth. You're always managing that level of freedom you hope to get to. Mm-hmm. And the better I think you are at that, and the better you get to know yourself, the better everything else you are in your life, the better partner you are, the better colleague you are, the better friend you are, the better mother you are, because you're just being a better version of yourself.
Yeah. And I think, too, it makes you so much more empathetic.
That's right.
To others.
Yeah.
And so we've talked, we have this book out, we've talked about the title, and you talked a little bit, about how writing this has actually, you're almost reliving this. Talk to us about what happened in your childhood.
So for me, growing up was just all about instability, which again also factored into why I kept moving every year from my whole life. The moving aspect for me was like a cleansing restart, because I did it every 6 months, and I always put my stuff in a black garbage sack. So the name, the garbage bag girl, started off as that. Like other foster children, which is odd that we still even have that happen today, but we do, are throwing their stuff in a garbage sack. They're moving from place to place. I moved every 6 months when I was in the system. So for me, my childhood was I either lived with another family member, or then maybe I'd go back home. My parents were trying to figure it out. And then I'd go into a foster home, and then I'd move back home. And now as an adult, I know that was the state allowing some time for my parents to hopefully figure things out. And then and for me, the every 6 months meant New York to Detroit, Michigan, to another city in Utah. I mean, I lived in about 32 cities by the time I was 16.
Wow.
And honestly, I have a huge appreciation for world travel. I have a huge appreciation for the diversity of religions, because people will ask me, well, what religion were you raised in? And I'm like, depending on whose house I lived in.
Yeah.
All of those are great skills. I feel like those actually helped me with some strong resiliency skills. But how it negatively affected me is, one, I ended up losing my brother and sister. And one of the most beautiful things to me that I never get sick of sharing, because it's my favorite, is that at the Christmas box houses, we have 3 emergency shelters in Utah, one in Moab, one in Ogden, and one in Salt Lake. And between the 3 locations, we keep 1,000 siblings together on average every year. 1,000 brothers and sisters that, unlike me, would have been totally ripped apart and put into separate homes. And I was the parent when I was a sibling. I was the oldest of 3. And it just was my natural job to take care of my sister. So by the time I was 7, I had a stool up to the stove. You know, I became a fabulous mac and cheese cooker. It's a skill set for sure. My daughter's like, how come you don't look at the directions?
And you're like, oh, I don't need the directions.
Don't even worry about that. And, you know, a delicacy would have been, did we get to go to the food bank that week and get hot dogs or bacon and chop up in it? Like, life was simple, even though it was complicated because we just didn't have a lot. But I did my homework, my daughter, see, there you go, my sister's homework with her at night, figured out how to, if I gave her a bath at the same time as me, we could shorten time because we could get out and I could help her with her homework and then be done in time to do my own homework. Like, I just learned that time management kind of stuff. But what I didn't know is how to be a sister, like how to be a sibling. And it wasn't until my mid-30s that one of my first therapists said to me, your grief right now, Celeste, because I was in a really tough place in my mid-30s, is because you are experiencing the loss of children, not siblings. And that deep, dark embeddedness is so heavy that your mourning is just, it's ripping your heart out. And the moment he said it, I had the best aha moment, like, oh my gosh, that would have been so good to know 10 years ago. Yeah. Because I just couldn't figure out whether we'd reconnected, you know, later as young adults. And I was like, why is that still so hard for me to have lost that? And so to be able to understand that was helpful. There's a book that I read while I was writing my book called What Happened to You? And it's co-authored by a doctor and Oprah Winfrey. And it's really an informative piece that is changing child welfare in the way that we talk to people, which is, I should never ask you, and especially because the mental health stuff means so much to you, you'll really appreciate this. I should never ask you what is wrong with you.
Oh, and that, how do you even...
Like, I hate that. And I don't ever use the word hate, but I really strongly do not like when people ask somebody, what is wrong with you? What happens? You immediately get defensive. Like, your whole body language changes when I say that to you, because
you saw that question, and why can't you just calm down or relax are two that I'm like, ooh.
If you want to know how to make me heated, tell me to relax one more time. It's what happened to you, not what's wrong with you. If I ask you what happened to you, tell me what happened to you. Your whole demeanor right now softens. Like, the way you look at me, the way we're going to have a conversation is so different than if I ask you, well, what happened to you? Mm-hmm. And that big shift even in child welfare on the way we talk to children has really greatly made a massive impact, I think, in the mental health space, in how, like you said earlier, and how we treat empathy with other people. I always say empathy isn't an excuse of someone's behavior. Empathy is just an understanding of where someone's coming to that, by the way, makes you understand you a lot more too.
Yeah.
And I think that reciprocal behavior just ends up being so invaluable. So for me, childhood was just that. It was just every 6 months, it was unknown. I never knew who I'd live with, how long I would stay, where the home would be located. And it was just complicated. And many of the children that come to the Christmas box house are feeling the same way. So when we finally decided to write my book, we realized we had this really unique opportunity to have people, donors and wonderful community that give to our children, meet them in an indirect way, because they're in state custody and you rarely would get to meet them. Mm-hmm. and they rarely get to meet you. And so we're like, wow, what a great opportunity to gain insight into who these kids are, how they think, how they feel, what it means to them to have your generosity in their life. And now that we're 28 years strong and we've served 155,000 children,
Amazing.
we have alumni come back.
Really?
And that's exactly what they tell us is, oh my gosh, how do we give back? You changed our life. You changed the trajectory of, and helped us break the cycle. And how do we give back? And I can't believe all those people that we never knew had that much compassion and really loved us, and we didn't know the whole time.
That's so
which
beautiful.
is awesome.
And I mean, we've been talking about this. What did, in your opinion, what are some of the most urgent needs right now for children in, foster care today?
I think, so whether there's so many ways people can be involved, like the utahfostercare.org is a great website for this, great resource. Because some people are like, I don't think I can be a foster parent, even though we'll never have enough. We'll always have way more kids than we will have foster homes. Yeah. That's just a forever problem, unfortunately. We need more great, loving homes, but we need people to also volunteer. There's lots of ways people can do that. But I think the empathy button cannot be underplayed. I just don't think it can. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what and why foster parents do what they do. I think it's just like any other family. You've got some that are a little more dysfunctional than others. I just think they get a really bad rap sometimes because you have a bad story that comes out, and then it just taints this entire system. And right. I didn't have great placements, but I do meet a lot of people that do. I think all of the, let's just say, bad luck that I had growing up, that everything was failing me, I don't believe anything happens by chance. I think that I was supposed to be led to what I am doing today, and I personally would never change any of those awful things in my book if it altered where I get to be today. If it altered Celeste getting to be executive director of the Christmas Box International, helping 14,000 children a year, I'd be like, you know what? I'll take it all day long. I'll take it, because I think we end up where we're supposed to be in a way that is meaningful and helps us drive our passion and compassion to others. Yeah. And I think that we need more of that. We need more of that in the system. We need more of that with each other.
I think we need more of that in the world.
Just period, yeah.
If I'm going to be fair. And that's such a testament to you that, honestly, someone who has been through what you've been through, it is so easy to just shut the world out.
It is.
And it is so easy to just say, I don't want to help anyone because of what I've been through. Why do I?
Or behave in a way that you were taught to behave. I think we have a responsibility to unravel and unpack. And, part of pushing healthy mental health habits is you break your own cycle of feeling victimized. And the moment you do that,
so like huge.
You just empower yourself, and you free yourself from all those chains. Because people are like, how did you forgive all those people? And I was like, it wasn't for them.
It's for you.
I didn't forgive any of them because they deserve it. Like, that's not my job to decide what they deserve. I let myself off that hook a long time ago. It's for me. It's for me to not be chained to something or someone that has wronged or hurt me. I don't want that. I don't want that chain. I don't want that hook to me. I don't need it in my life. It benefits me zero to be angry at somebody for long periods of time. And if it's not helping me, then it's certainly not helping my children. Yeah. It's certainly not helping my partner. It's certainly not helping my team that I am in charge of. You know what I mean? Like that's so reciprocal.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The mental health thing is just such a big deal.
And so often there's a quote that it's said a lot because it's true. So often hurt people.
It's one of my favorites. Yeah.
And to be a cycle breaker is huge to stop that from continuing on. And that is what you did. And now, I mean, think of everything you've done now. What are some of the key initiatives in this position that you are so proud of?
So I'm proud of the fact that we, obviously that we help 14,000 children a year. I always say it's a bittersweet job because Richard Evans and I, when we started it 28 years ago, I remember us looking at each other and saying, this will be the one job that if one day we don't have to have, it's going to be okay. We won't be sad about it. But unfortunately, every year the need gets bigger. Mental health issues become bigger. Drug addiction is bigger. And so the children, we receive more children for longer periods of time, and they're harder to place into families. And so the problem is dismal. It's a lot. But I'm so blessed that we get to do very meaningful things like keep the 1,000 siblings together a year.
That is so
We
amazing.
have the 3 shelters. We have, in addition to that, because not all kiddos stay at a shelter, some can go home under a safety plan with the state or into foster care, but they all need essential items. So we also have 23 resource rooms located in 16 of our 29 counties that are located in human services offices where caseworkers can get items for kiddos. And that we serve more children that way than we do in our shelters.
Oh, wow.
So I'm super proud of that. My goal is that we scale across all 29 counties as soon as possible, because then we will have, I'll know we help about 1,100 caseworkers in our state. And if we're helping all caseworkers, we're helping all the children. So I'm a pretty growth-driven person. I don't.
I get that.
Yeah, I don't feel that things like should stay stagnant. I don't think that's healthy. I think as long as we can manage growth, growth is great. So that is our goal. We want to be in all 29 counties, hopefully in the next 3 years.
You are doing amazing things. And
Thank you.
I mean, your story, it is a story of incredible resilience. What message of hope would you like to share to the children that are currently in foster care, who are currently going through some, maybe not the exact thing, but something similar to what you went through?
They all are very similar. That is true. When I speak to kids in foster care and I learn their stories, there is this deep understanding that we kind of have with each other, this unspoken truth. I always say this isn't statistically proven, this is Celeste stat. That,
well, then I'm going to say that it's factual.
Right? Obviously.
Celeste stat.
If you hear it on the internet, it's got to be true. I'm kidding. When a child goes into the child welfare system, so whether they're like me staying at a drug rehabilitation center with a mom, or they're staying in foster care or with another family member, once they enter that system, their soul has aged about 10 years. In my opinion. And it's because they've seen and heard and felt things that most adults I know have never felt, right? Yeah. So if you've got, my soul is greatly aged, but developmentally, physically, emotionally, I'm not caught up to that 10 years of experience I felt.
That has to be really jarring.
Imagine that conflict.
Yeah.
That's right. And so when I talk to kids in foster care, especially if they're 8, 9, 10, 11 or older, as I was, I always say, man, I can feel that conflict. I can feel that struggle that you have between what you know and what you feel and what you haven't learned on how to get where you want to be. And it also must be very frustrating that you feel like you don't get to make any of the decisions in your life, and that's so chaotic and out of control. All I can promise you is that there will become a day that you get to make those decisions. You get to be in charge of yourself. You get to make your own choices. And all the decisions you make today that seem small or crazy will impact where you go in your future. And that is one thing you do get to control. You get to control your rage. You get to control how you act on something you feel. Nobody gets to take any of that away from you. That is a power you get to have, and it will influence where you go in your future. So please take some time, when you're in those crazy spots, to think about the decisions you make, to think about the choices you have, and don't be careless. Just because people are careless with you, don't be careless with other people, because that will come back to you later on in your life.
Right.
And you do get to choose that now. So if you only get certain choices in your life, make the best ones you can, even though it's hard and it hurts and I know it sucks. I would never sugarcoat to someone in foster care and not say it doesn't suck how you feel. It does. Yep. It's hurtful. You didn't do anything to deserve where you're at, but you still deserve to have all the people in your life that you can find that are willing to champion for you. Anyone in your life, a teacher, a social worker, a caseworker, a family member, a friend, anyone that's a champion for you, you hold on to them. You hold on to them hard and just try to keep making good decisions for your life.
So beautifully said. And we just talked about what you're telling those kids in foster care. You are honest with them, but these are words that they can hold on to and have hope to. I mean, you're not, like you said, you're not sugarcoating it. Yeah. You're not telling them a lie that this is fine, this is great. No, it's not. It sucks.
Nothing about it is okay.
Nothing is. And that is what kids need to hear, is that you understand, but here's some hope to have.
That's right. And you don't live in the space of feeling victimized. It will never empower you. Nope. It will never help you make a better decision for yourself and for your life. Yeah. That feeling of poor me, or like, my brother used to say when he was drinking and being abusive in his life, like father, like son, there's no place for that. There's no place to say that everything that happened to me has to keep happening in my life. The moment you get stuck in that space, there's no growth for your future. Yeah. And no one else gets to control that thought but you. Yeah.
And it is so incredibly hard to be a cycle breaker from people I have known and from stories I've heard. But the amount of power you have when you yourself decide to break that cycle
is awesome.
Is amazing.
Yeah. It's so good.
So what would you say, what message do you want people to take away when they read this book?
I do want people to feel hopeful. Mm-hmm. I'd sometimes think, like for me in foster care, I got let off the hook so much. I mean, people would literally say to me in school, oh, you know what? You've been going through a lot. You don't have to turn that in. Or no one expects that of you. It looks like you've had a lot of hard things happen to you. Why don't you just go ahead and not do that, whatever that was? I got let off the hook so many times, and I would say that was never helpful for me. All it did was teach me that I didn't get to be like kids that weren't in my situation. I didn't get to have what maybe they had, even if I didn't know what that meant.
So it made you feel even more different.
It made me feel less. Yeah. And I was trying so hard. Like I have people now that read my book and they went to like high school with me and they'll say, we had no idea. And I'm like, that's awesome. Then I win. I didn't want you to have any idea that I was sleeping on the bleachers sometimes and taking a shower in school. I didn't want you to know that I lived with a third family in 3 months. I didn't want you to know the weird things because I just wanted to be treated normal. And I was worried about that also publishing my book. Writing it was hard enough. And then the day we decided, we had the conversation, Richard and I, about publishing it, I was like, oh man, now people are going to read it. It's like it just hit me that I was going to be like, here's my journal, you're welcome. And how would people respond?
That is just like opening up yourself to the world.
Oh my gosh. So I always tell people, yes, when they're like, can I ask you a personal question? I'm like, oh,
you're like, well, here's my book.
Please.
There's an answer.
I'm an open book for sure. I can't think of anything I didn't share in my life. As a matter of fact, I put 3 things in my book I'd never even talked about until writing my book. So I wasn't worried about the people that didn't know me. I was worried about
the people that did.
My kids, especially. Everybody knew bits and pieces, but they did not know the graphic detail I decided to go into in the book. And we did that for authenticity purposes. We want it to be as real as possible. So I really want people to walk away knowing that there's always hope. And hope doesn't mean you don't have a plan. Hope doesn't equal careless. Hope doesn't equal, I think sometimes people think, oh, that's so cute, you have hope. No, it's not. Hope is a strong resiliency skill that empowers someone to think about other positive things in their life, like empathy and optimism. You have to have hope to have those other things, to grow into your community, to feel rooted. Hope carries all of that. So I want people to feel hopeful. I want foster kids to know that they get to grow up and be who they want to be too. If they want to be a CEO of a company, go for it. If they want to be an executive director, go for it. If they just want to be a really great parent, go for it. You can be what you want to be the same as somebody else can go after the things they want to be. It's not different for you. As a matter of fact, I would argue you have a leg up because you're gritty. Yeah. You have deep-rooted resiliency skills that you can keep honing in on, that other people that you went through that you went through more than they did are not going to have what you have. So use that as a way to build power for yourself and do good things.
That is so, so lovely. And this, we've talked about it. It's January. It's National Mental Wellness Month. So what, I mean, like I said this at the beginning, mental health is so important to me. With that being this month, what would you say to, you know, maybe not just foster kids, but maybe someone reading the book that are kind of stuck in these garbage thoughts that they have about themselves?
Yeah. So when I talked earlier about mental health being a process and stuff, something that you manage, it's because I keep like this list in my phone that I always look at that are like my 8 areas of wellness, if you will. And I always go through them usually once a week to ask myself, because people will say, how do you have balance? And I'm like, oh, balance isn't what you think. It's not like a 50-50. It's not like a pie and there's a certain percentage, right?
It's not a scale that's just equally.
No.
No,
to me, balance is a day by day, because you don't know what's going to come at you.
Yeah.
And so, right. So when I look through like my areas of wellness, I think in this week, did my mental capacity, did my physicalness from the way my body feels, did my emotional highs and lows, did my spirituality, meaning my belief system, not necessarily religion, did my social connection and community, my personal interests, my professionalism, and my medical needs, did I touch on all of them this week? Mm-hmm. Did I do something? Mm-hmm. And again, it's not a pie chart. It's not like, did I do 10% on every single thing?
No.
Or 12% to equal my 100%. It's not that deep. Don't overthink it. It's just, I think you need to create your own mental health list that is, what do I constantly need to make sure that I've just checked marked something on it every day, or for me every week. I have made 1, 2, 3%, made myself that 1, 2, or 3% better than I did last week, because some weeks are just harder than others, right? Yeah. We don't know. Maybe it's an anniversary of something that was hard. Yeah. So I think if everybody's list might look a little different for them, that's mine. And I think if you have your list and you're just constantly you have these little ticks that, you know what, that was a spa day. That checks off that. Mm-hmm. Whatever that looks like for you. I'm a meditator. So for me, that brings a lot of spiritual awareness into my life. That ticks that, checks that box off. So whatever that means for you, I think it's important that you have that in something that matters to you, not something that someone else told you should be doing. But what does your list look like? What makes you just feel good? What inspires you? What makes you feel like, I'm a little better today than I was yesterday? Yeah. Not in that area, because that was a tough area. But in this other area, I'm a little bit better. And give yourself that win. Like, let yourself have that win. Some days, I'm a migraine getter chronically. And so some days I have this gratitude exercise that I have to say something I'm grateful for before my feet touch the ground. Uh-huh. And some days it's literally, I'm so grateful I didn't wake up with a migraine. It might just be that. Yeah. Or I walk into work and I'm like, I'm so grateful I showed up today. Yeah. I didn't feel like showing up today. Whatever that looks like, I think we get to have that win. I don't think someone gets to decide for us what the win looks like.
And I think it's so important. I've struggled with this because of my anxiety. It's very hard for me sometimes to accept my wins, because my wins should be bigger. It's like I try to exercise at least 20 minutes every day. I try. And I have a baby boy. He's like 8 months old now. And sometimes
it's rough.
Sometimes it doesn't happen. And sometimes I'll exercise for 10 and I berate myself. I'm like, well, that wasn't 20. And I'm like, no. That was still a win. Yeah. You still took care of yourself. So sometimes that is hard for us to actually accept those wins and say, yeah, that
it
was
is.
a win.
And remind yourself that if you have whatever your big goal, and it looks different for everybody, whatever your big goal is, if you're always thinking, my win isn't until I hit that big goal, then none of the little wins along the way ever matter. Mm-hmm. They never matter, because the big goal is so big that I also promise you by the time you hit the big goal, you don't celebrate that either, because you haven't practiced how to celebrate. So when I walk in the house, the kids tease me, but I know that they're adults now, that it really does matter to them. My son will be like, oh, here's Mom. What are we celebrating today, Mom? Because for me, every day, so I'm like, and it's no joke. I'm like, for me, I'm glad I'm grabbing my glass of wine. I'm like, y'all can grab a glass of water. I don't really care, but you're cheersing me for something that happened today. I don't really care what you're drinking. It's irrelevant. Grab the Sprite, grab whatever you want, but we're cheersing, and everybody gets to talk about a win that they had. And I'll start if you don't want to start. I don't really care. You know what I mean? But it can literally be anything. My daughter finished a really important paper for college. That was a big deal for her. You know, my other daughter just drove to the grocery store because she struggles with anxiety. She's like, you know what? I went to the grocery store today. You're welcome. I didn't even DoorDash that. I'm like, high five. Get it, girl. Get it.
The amount of times I have DoorDashed simple
Thank
things
you.
like mascara.
Oh, I do it all the time. Like, what does Walgreens have to offer? You know what? Sometimes that's a win. And the wins are just a way to make you smile and sometimes laugh at the silly things you do. Like, we have such a DoorDash joke in our family because we're like ridiculous users of it.
See,
and some people like, do you ever leave the house? And I'm like, you're joking, right? Like, you know who I am. I don't rarely get to stay home. So when I get to stay home, this is a win for Celeste.
I love that. I love Celeste and that makes life more full.
Just smile and laugh at yourself because it is hard. Like, hard shows its face naturally. It just does. It like always presents itself. You're like, how does hard just always seem to show up in my life? So does happy. It just doesn't feel as organic. It just doesn't feel as natural. And sometimes it's a little unnatural. Like, am I supposed to be smiling at that? Yep, you are.
I love that.
You are supposed to be smiling at that.
Celeste, it has been, I wish I could find a bigger word for joy. It has truly been an honor to chat with you today. Before we wrap up, where can we buy your book?
It's on Amazon and on paperback. And if you're not a physical reader, it's also on Kindle if you like to read that way. And then it's also, I recorded it myself on Audible. So it is my voice. You're welcome.
Perfect. Well, we've been listening to it the past little bit, and it's lovely. Celeste,
Thank you.
Thank you again for coming in. Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone, for listening today. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe, and we will catch you next time.
Congrats, you made it to the end. If you want to continue to freshen up your day, you can watch us on Fresh Living every weekday on CBS Channel 2 in Utah at 1 o'clock. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel, KUTV Fresh Living, and follow us on social media. We will see you next week.